In this video, we're going to divide a polynomial, as we have done in the last couple of videos. And we're in a different situation in dealing with this example. And I'm going to show you what happens. I'm actually going to do this incorrectly to begin with. And the reason I'm doing this is because, a lot of you in a week, 2 weeks, 2 months may forget how to do this. But you're going to run into this problem, and I just want you to be aware of it. So when this happens, you can catch yourself, and you can sort of pivot and use the proper method. So we have x cubed minus 1 divided by x minus 1. So they're in descending order. So we could go ahead and we could set this up. And if we divide, okay, we're looking for some term times x, which gives me x to the third. So that's going to be x squared. So I'm just going to multiply these out. So this becomes x to the third. And then I'm going to multiply x squared times minus 1, and I get minus x squared. I'm going to subtract these, so that first term cancels out, as it should. And this gets a little bit confusing, because now we have negative 1 minus negative x squared. And, you could try to parse this and say, all right, well, I know that those are not like terms. I can't subtract those. So what exactly should I do with it? Should I go, excuse me, should I go, negative 1 minus a negative x squared? Does that become negative 1 plus x squared? And now do I have to rewrite that in descending order? And now try to find something times x, which gives me x squared? Well, this becomes a little bit confusing, okay? And let's do this properly, because this right there, I don't know about that, right? So let's look at it another way. And take our divisor. This time, I am going to include x squared terms, the x squared term, the x term, and then our 1. But these terms don't exist, so I need to put zeros there. Okay, and they're really just placeholders. So now let's divide, and let's see what happens now that we're using our placeholders. So we're going to use our x squared again. We get x cubed. Now when we multiply x squared times negative 1, I can subtract it from a like term. Okay, right here we got 0x squared minus a negative x squared, which gives us positive x squared. Then we're going to bring down the 0x term. Now we're going to divide again. So what times x gives us x squared? We're going to get a positive x. So we get x squared, then we're going to multiply that times negative 1, and that's a negative 1x. I'm going to subtract those. Those cancel out. We have 0 minus a negative 1x, so that becomes positive x. And remember, I'm subtracting here. You can add a negative if you want to. As I've pointed out in a previous video, you could do something along those lines. Okay, so I've divided, and I'm going to bring down the negative 1 again. So what times x gives me 1x, so that's got to be a positive 1. So 1 times x is 1x. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. We're subtracting. Those cancel out. Those cancel out. We're left with 0. So in this case, we end up with a remainder of 0. So our final answer is x squared plus x plus 1. That's our quotient. And remember, we could always check that by multiplying that times what we just divided by, and we should get the dividend of x cubed minus 1. So just a recap here. When you're dividing, you need to make sure that you include 0 placeholders. so we don't end up in a situation like we did up here where things just get confusing. It's not that this method doesn't work. You might be able to work your way through this and get that method to work, but man, is it going to create a mess. And more often than not, that mess is going to result in an answer that's not correct.